Inside this lecture, I'm going to share you a tip which you can use while styling React components. Though I'll show the demo of this tip with the help of inline styles, the same tip can be used at any concept in React to build better dynamic components. This is the dynamic styling that we have built in the previous lecture for the h1 tag under the footer. If you closely observe, there is a problem here, which is text align is always center, which means this text align is always static and it is not going to be influenced by the input boolean value or due to the any other input value that your component is going to receive. That's why it is not making sense to duplicate this code multiple times, both on the true side and the false side. Here I have only a single field which is always static, but in real projects you may have multiple fields which are always static regardless of the conditions. Such scenarios can easily optimized when we are using this style attribute. Let me show you how to optimize this code. For the same, first I'll try to mention curly braces because I want to create a JSON object which is always going to have text align as center. So let me copy this value and paste it here. Later, the second key that I want to send inside my JSON object is color. The value to this color key should be dynamic based upon the Boolean value. That's why I'll try to use the isActive Boolean followed by question mark. If this condition is true, I'll try to use this color value. Otherwise, I'll try to use this color. With this, now we have constructed a perfect JSON object. Let me get rid of this other object that we have. With that, now we have a proper styling. This is how you can optimize your code when you are using style. Now let's try to follow the same while we are trying to use the class name attribute to apply the inline style. Here, as of now, we are using style attribute. Maybe what I can do is I'll try to duplicate this line followed by I'll comment the second line for your reference. Next, I'll change this to class name. Once I mention the class name attribute, I can't use this syntax. This is only for the style attribute. Whenever we are using the class name, we should directly pass the CSS class name with this syntax. So let me remove this and mention double quotes. Inside the double quotes, I'm going to mention some CSS class name. Let me go to the footer.css and I'll try to uncomment this class and let me take this my heading and paste it here. With this now, our code should work without any issue because we are only trying to apply one CSS class always without any dynamic condition. Here also the heading is displayed as expected. But the problem will arise when you want to feed one more class dynamically to this class name. So as of now, I have only my heading class. Similarly, I can try to provide any number of classes which are separated by space. So this is perfectly valid inside CSS. And all these are static CSS class names, so there won't be any problem. But if you want to dynamically inject a class name into the class name attribute, you're going to face a problem. Let me show you the same. Maybe what I'll do is I'll get rid of these my heading duplicate class names. I'll go to footer.css. Here, I'll try to create one class with the name primary color. And inside this primary color class, I'll have this color as value. Let me get rid of this value inside my heading, followed by I'll try to duplicate the same class name one more time. And this time I'll mention secondary color. Inside the secondary color, I'm going to have the red color. Let me copy this red color and paste it here. So now I have two different classes. One is primary color and secondary color. These classes, I want to apply them dynamically. So let's go to home.jsx and here, let's think based upon this isActive, I want to apply the class name dynamically. Let me mention isActive followed by question mark, followed by I can mention the class name, which is primary color. After mentioning the true value, I'm going to mention colon followed by I'll mention the other class that we have, which is secondary color. But this syntax, it is not going to work. Let me go to the UI and if I try to refresh this page, I'm always going to get the same red color. It is not changing the color dynamically. Though I'm trying to refresh 100 number of times, I'm always getting this red color, which confirms my dynamic condition is not working. Here, the problem is inside a string, which is surrounded by double quotes, we're trying to first pass a static class name, which is always going to be same, followed by we're trying to pass a dynamic condition. But JavaScript does not know that this is a dynamic condition and it has to evaluate. That's why we are getting an unexpected result. To handle these kind of scenarios where you want to combine static and dynamic class names to the class name attribute, there is a clever hack that you can use from the JavaScript. This clever hack is template literals. Inside JavaScript, there is a concept called template literals or template strings. Using these template strings, we should be able to combine static content and dynamic content seamlessly. There is a good documentation around this on this page. I'm going to mention this URL inside the GitHub repo README document. You can read at your ease, but let me try to cover some important details around these template literals, because this concept is not only applicable for styling of the React components. In the upcoming sections, we are going to use this concept a lot when we are trying to build the dynamic components based upon multiple input parameters. The syntax to use these template literals is you need to surround your string with the backtick characters. Backtick is a special character which is available inside keyboard just below your escape button. Here under the syntax, you have some example. This is a static text which is surrounded by backticks. Since there is only a static content, always the same is going to be processed or displayed by the JavaScript engine. The other scenario where you are going to use this template literals is when you want to write a static content which is spread across multiple lines. Usually inside programming languages, if you want to introduce a next line, we type a special character which is / followed by n. Instead of typing that manually, what you can do is you can type any amount of content within these backticks. You can type 100 lines or 200 lines, just like how you do inside text editor or inside the WordPad. When you press enter, behind the scenes, this template literals, it is going to convert that into a next line symbol, which can be understood by your programming language. From a normal developer perspective, you don't have to deal this technically. You can type all your lines across multiple lines casually without worrying about all the special syntaxes that you need to take care for your programming language. And the next scenario where we can use these template literals is you can combine static and dynamic expressions. For example, here, first they have a static content, followed by they have a dynamic expression that is going to be executed at runtime. This dynamic expression is going to be evaluated and the output is going to be replaced as a static value here. After the dynamic expression, we also have another static value. Inside template literals, whenever you want to define dynamic content, you need to follow this syntax, which is $ followed by curly braces, and inside the curly braces, you can mention your JavaScript expression. This is the syntax that we are going to use to solve our problem. Here, what I'm going to do is just after the class name, I'm going to mention curly braces because I'm going to write some JavaScript expression by using template literals or string literals. Inside these curly braces, let me type backtick. So there are two backticks, opening and closing. Please make sure you're pressing backtick button, but not the single quote button. First, I'm going to mention my static class name, which is my heading, followed by I'll mention space. After the space, I'm going to mention $ and curly braces. Inside these curly braces, I need to mention my dynamic condition. What is my dynamic condition? This is my dynamic condition. Let me take this and paste it inside my curly braces. With this, I'm assuming we should be good. Let me get rid of this, my heading here along with the double quotes. Let me save them, and with that, proper formatting happened. But there is a problem. My primary color is automatically formatted with these hyphens. Maybe what I can do is I'll try to surround my primary color value as a string. So let me mention primary -color. Let me do the same for secondary color as well. Once it is surrounded with double quotes, I am removing the spaces. Let me save these changes. Now we are good. So if you closely observe, for the class name, we are trying to pass a JavaScript expression. Since this is a JavaScript expression, we need to pass these curly braces. Inside this JavaScript expression, we're trying to use the template literals or string literals. First, we have the static class name, which is my hyphen heading followed by space. And towards the end, we have a dynamic condition. Since this is a dynamic condition, we need to surround this with the $curly brace. And inside the curly brace, we can define our dynamic condition. This way, we can write any number of dynamic conditions. So after this dynamic condition, if needed, I can introduce one more dynamic condition. After the second dynamic condition, maybe I can define a static class name like my class. Like this, you can combine lot of static content and dynamic conditions as well. Let me roll back these new changes that I have done. I'm assuming we're good. Let me save these changes and go to the browser. Inside the browser, let me validate if there are any compilation issues. There are no compilation issues. Now I'm going to refresh this page and the color has changed. That means our dynamic condition is working properly without any issues. Here I'm trying to use these template literals to control my styling dynamically. But the same concept can also be used to change your component behavior dynamically. We are going to explore more and more examples around this in the upcoming sections. I hope you're clear. Before I try to close this lecture, let me show you this slide which I have prepared to explain on how to use template literals. With the help of these template literals, we can try to combine both static and dynamic styles. Here I have an example. There is a card component. Inside this card component, for this class name, I want to pass a static class name which is card, and based upon this hash shadow boolean value, I want to pass shadow class. In the case of false, the class is going to be dummy or empty class. And similarly, there is another boolean which is going to be received as an input to this component. This boolean is rounded. Based upon this is rounded, I want to control another class which is rounded or empty. With the help of template literals, this can be easily achieved. You just have to take care of using these backtick, which is a syntax to use template literals. Inside backtick, you can write your static content normally, whereas whenever you are trying to execute some JavaScript expression dynamically, you need to make sure you are surrounding it with the $ and curly brace. The same we are trying to do here as well. You can use the same template literals for inline styles while you are using style attribute as well. Here, if you closely observe, for width, I'm trying to calculate the value dynamically and I'm using string literals here. So here I only have a dynamic condition and I don't have any static content, still it is going to work. If needed, apart from this dynamic condition, you can also mention a static content as well. Of course, for width, you're always going to have a single value, but you can combine static and dynamic value for other properties like margin. For margin and padding as well, we can mention multiple values like what should be the margin for top, bottom, right, and left. Maybe top and bottom, you can always have as static values, but coming to the other two values, you can use dynamic expression. So the whole value to the margin can be built with the help of template literals where you can have both static and dynamic content. I hope you liked this tip and you got some clarity. Thank you. Bye.